Hi guys, thank you for joining today's presentation. Today's presenter will be Ezra. If you have any doubt or any questions, you can drop in the Q&A session. After the session ends, Ezra will be answering to all your question and answers. Over to you, Ezra.
Okay, thanks, Harry, for the session. So the today's session will be divided into two sections. So the first one will have a look at what is the policy optimizer and how it can be able to assist us to be, more resilient or make our rules, more optimized. So what is this about optimization that we're talking about? So policy optimizer. So this is a feature in PanOS, I think from 9.0. So this helps us to make our policies more readable and more secure. So maybe to make some kind of a flashback about what had happened before the policy optimizer. So again, Palo Alto, one of its advocations is that we need to move the rules from the legacy rules to what we call app ID based rules. So before then, we used to have something of this sort in our security appliances or our firewalls. So when you look at this rule, and this is just a snapshot of part of these rules, you realize that from the screen, you can see around 35,678 rules. So, which means that there are other rules. So, having this screenshot tells us about how much, work that we have when it comes to creating these rules. This is because each and every day there is a continuous requirements. IP addresses are changing. We provisioning new services. So again, different applications are always under some kind of upgrade, or they continue changing. There is introduction of new services and new applications into the infrastructure. So you will end up having a rule base of hundreds, maybe of thousands or tens of thousands of rules. This is because sometimes we don't want to touch on some of the rules that we had made before, or some of the rules that are still existing but not active. Having a rule selected and you deactivate it maybe because you wanted to do some kind of troubleshooting. And then also, organizations continuously keep on changing, the stuff. Someone who was today is not the same person who will be tomorrow. So people always feel a little bit safer not to change anything or not to change the existing rules, but add something that can be able to allow these new services to be provisioned without affecting or getting other services. And again, some of the solutions might be a little bit complex, and most of the people are not really they are not really able, or they are not easily get kind of confused to change or touch a few things because they are not comfortable, because this again solution might be a little bit complex. So these are all some of the things that Policy Optimizer is trying to make our work easier by reducing all this number of rules into very few rules. So in some typical cases, we normally see that Policy Optimizer can be able to reduce your rule base by more than 80%. So let's say you add around 10,000 rules, you can easily reduce that one into maybe 1,000 or even much less than this number. So if you get 80% reduction, then the other routes might be more readable, and you're going to reduce this kind of attack vectors that might be introduced. Maybe you had allowed certain ports which might be used by the bad applications to be able to do data exfiltration. So these rules, when you look at them, like for example, the source IP, you just seeing a source IP, but you're not sure whether this is really the same IP address, or it might be spoofed by the other malicious PC that might be compromised to be able to propagate some kind of traffic into the infrastructure. So a lot of things are happening in the background. So some of the solutions that we might be having the same kind of an outlook when it comes to these rules. So this again will pose a different challenge each and every day. So how can we make sure that we're making, more stuff out of this? How can we be able to, even if this is a new intern who just came maybe 2 or 3 days ago, he can be able to read these rules and understand what each of these rules are doing. So again, we have seen some attacks happen, things like WannaCry, which were using some of the protocols in native Windows components to be able to, move laterally and infect other, other solutions. So this is again is something that we need to understand. So what are these and how can we make more out of them? So this is because some of these protocols or some of these services, sometimes they use services that we don't understand. For example, port 443 might not be the same HTTPS that we normally talk about. So port maybe 25 that's mostly used for mail protocols. It's not the same service that might be there. So we got the vast of applications which can use literally any application or any port that is existing. Having, for example, a torrent using port 53, which you had maybe set up for DNS. So some of these things are the ones that we normally have to be very careful about. How can you be able to just limit rules based on applications and based on the applications that you want, or have these applications but have more control over them? For example, this application can only upload but not download, or I don't want to have users from a certain department which might not be more of a tech service restricted to these applications because they might not know when they're getting some things like drive-by downloads. So again, the complexities coming from these kind of rules make again IT guys not able to really understand what's happening because you just see just numbers, applications, and something that might not make that sense to maybe guys who want to have the infosec team who might want to have a look at the rules or maybe try to understand is there anything that's going on. Also, when you look at it, there is some kind of costs that come with all these kind of rules, which might not make a lot of sense. For example, there is some kind of, when you're doing some kind of migration, there are some of the processes that are supposed to be there. You need to get some kind of approvals. So each and everybody has got its own ways in which it does this. For example, when you want to move these rules, it's not just maybe the network team that might come in. You might need some guys from the application department trying to understand, okay, this is the exact application, but again, it can be able to use this and this application port. Or, there is more of trying to pull different resources together before you do this kind of migration, get the right approvals. So, at the end of the day, we need to have some kind of business continuity plan. So all these things are going to come with a cost because these resources may not be focusing on the right guys. So they might not be focusing on, who is supposed to be doing what. So when you look at this is going to introduce other things that are not intended into the business. So again, having said this, at the end of the day, we need to make sure that in every organization we are trying to reduce the cost. How do we reduce the cost? We need to make sure that we are not going to interrupt, other departments which are focusing on their business and focusing on what only matters. So this is very critical when arguing from this point. So at the end of the day, when you're done with migration, this is how the whole situation look like. You zoom it out, you very, because the amount of effort that you had put into having this kind of digital transformation from just legacy rules to more of RFID based rules, or the rules that are making sense, that are going to reduce these kind of attack services into a more focused approach on the only applications that you use, and not only just the application that you use, but the business based rules, these kind of rules that make sure that everything is working the way it's anticipated. So again, when you're talking about all these kind of components, we need to have a solution that can easily move, this kind of lift and shift, but in a very secure manner. So there's some kind of automations that are supposed to be coming in. There's some of the things that are supposed to be followed. So when you focus on such kind of things, then you need a tool that is resilient, a tool that is more, agile, that can assist you in doing all this. Reduce the kind of force that you're going to use in doing this kind of migration. So these are some of the features. So again, this kind of session might not make much sense, but again, can try to create or some kind of a picture for those kind of guys who might not be having this kind of a PAN-OS or Palo Alto Networks solution installed in their enterprise. But again, it's trying to create some kind of a picture on how some of the nice features that are in Palo Alto can make your life much easier by not only reducing this kind of attack service. As we know again from Gartner's research, we normally see that around more than 90% of the total breaches they come because of security misconfiguration. So how can we be able to leverage these kind of native tools that are in the platform to be able to reduce these kind of breaches that are happening? So again, by doing App ID, we reduce the gaps that we might not we might not have had a glance about. You just maybe say that this is not something that might be happening. But again, sometimes we got up into these kind of situations whereby, for example, there is some kind of an agency that came in. We need to make sure that we're reducing all this kind of noise by saying allow any, and then we leave these kind of rules. So what it means again is that we not only focusing on which app does what, or which application is supposed to be doing what, but again trying to make sure that these kind of things that we did before, are we able to make sure that we can discover? For example, it's really hard to swim through 10,000 rules to be able to understand that all these kind of 10,000 rules are we really moving on what we're supposed to be doing? Is there some kind of loophole that we've left in these kind of rules when we're doing this kind of configuration? So this is very critical, that we need to have a solution that can help us to minimize this kind of errors, this kind of any. Then when you're tired, you just go home, and later to realize that we left some loopholes that the bad guys can be able to use to propagate in. And then we need to have a solution that is much resilient, focused. For example, creating a filter that will show you all the kind of rules that you created that are not being used actively, and for the application that you did intend, or having these kind of applications that once you turn them on, you can be able to have a filter of some kind of categories. Can I be able to understand how many hits this rule got, maybe within this kind of a short duration of time? Can I be able to maybe have some kind of filters to understand this rule I made it from within this kind of duration, for example, in less than 3 weeks? Is it really getting something? So by doing this, you have more visibility. Instead of swimming through all these rules, you'll be having a focus and make yourself productive, or do some things that are supposed to be intended to be done. So again, so how can we be able to reduce this kind of this kind of all work that we're doing? For example, you can get to managing things like 16,000, maybe or 10,000 or 5,000 devices. Are we able to focus? Are we able to make sure that we reduce this kind of continuous learning model? For example, before you tear down a rule, you have to remember. Yeah? So you need to have a feature that at least remember some kind of machine learning and automation in solutions that can help us to, even if you did some changes and then you cannot be able to get them. For example, some of the guys, you find that some logs, because of again of the size, they have a policy that they only have logs for things like 2 weeks only. So how can you be able to have again some kind of a continuous learning model that can have the holistic approach of the device just from and where you're going to? So again, we need to have a solution that can be able to address other legal solutions. For example, you have some firewalls which are still on version maybe 7 or version 8. Then again, you need to consume this kind of feature. So one of the beauty about this is that you can just do an upgrade for PAN-OS that is in the panorama component and be able still to get all these features. So you don't need to go to every firewall of this kind of feature or maybe upgrade for you to be able to consume this. So by just doing the upgrade for panorama, you can still be able to get all these kind of features, do analysis, audit all the kind of appliances, and be able to move forward without any issue. Then we need to make sure that there is a way, there is a kind of some kind of approach that we are going to use in order to be able to mitigate, the time that you're taking to do this. For example, this workflow in a manner that you can be able, for example, select one rule or maybe select a certain rule set, maybe clone it, then move it to application-based policy. Then after which you can now be able to, do some kind of analysis. Now, after I did a clone, optimize this rule maybe to up this rule. Is the other rule still having some kind of fits? So until now, you are comfortable, or you start signal that now you need to move to some kind of rules that now are not receiving hits, then maybe deactivate them. This is again another nice way in which you can be able to work by mitigating the risks or maybe avoiding bringing the business down. So this kind of futuristic and deterministic way of doing configuration changes helps us to make us to have rules that are a little bit comfortable to deal with, and also have a workaround, or in case there is an issue, you have at least a rollback process. So again, what do we expect? What is the resulting from that, that table that was showing a lot of IPs, funny numbers of ports, that is 443 or maybe port 80. We don't want to assume, because 443 is not always SSL. So what it means is that the ports are not always the services that you intend. So it's good to be able to use the inbuilt features that detect and understand applications in layer 7 to be able to, reduce this kind of attack surface that can come from this kind of ports that we're not sure whether it's the same application. So, for example, when you're looking at these kind of results, is that you're going to have one rule that has taken maybe 16,000 or maybe 100 rules down into one rule. And what you can be able to see is that you can easily make this, you can easily make sense out of this rule. For example, this is a sanction SaaS applications for the corporate users, and you can be able to see all this list of numbers that have been written down. And then the other component is service about application default. So again, this is very hard because there is this helps you to just focus on what you intended. Then all the complexities are going to be just handled by the Palo Alto team when there is a content update. So here we've seen some kind of applications whereby, for example, if it was running on port 22 or maybe port 44 or maybe on a 9080 or something of that sort, then later on you realize that this application again has changed when they did some kind of update or when they did some kind of feature tweaking. So here it means that also the Palo team and the Unit 42 intelligence team will be able to get all this data and being handled by the application default. So they can be able to change and cater for all these kind of port changes and still consume all these kind of security products without any kind of a challenge that you need also go and change the port. So this is again a very hand feature. Then at the end of the day, once this application has been done, then now you can be able to come use the policy optimizer to be able now to have more, more visibility. You just select the rules. Maybe if you created this rule, can you be able to create filters to be able to match with this rule? When the timestamps, reducing timestamps when this rule was created, can you be able to have some kind of understanding that what's going on? So, for example, you can see that there is 0 hits, that is unused application. If you do this filter, you can easily see that the rule number 4 that allow port 80 and 443, that's the service HTTP and HTTPS, has received 0 hits, or there is no traffic that has been received for the past 30 days. So what does this mean to you is that now the IT manager can be able to now focus on what they need. Now they can be able to move in and then now delete these kind of rules. So again, this is one of the best ways in which you can be able to move forward without any kind of challenges. So this again can help us now to make informed decisions. So after observing all this time, you move now this rule to sanctioned SaaS applications. Then now you'll be good to go. So again, the ultimate or the final outcome is to have more clean rules which are going to reduce these kind of vulnerabilities. Like when you look at these kind of rules, you can easily see different sources now which is going to match with the different requirements to be able to have the best business outcomes. So you can easily see it like in rule number 3, we just limiting all the guys not to use Facebook, but you can easily get that the marketing team needs maybe Facebook to do marketing campaigns on social media and have more visibility on what's going on out there at the social media and how they can leverage that one to be able to increase the sales or create awareness for the product. Then you can also see that there are some corp users who are using iCloud and Yahoo for their services. Then you can easily know who are the guys who are supposed to be using you because you understand who are these guys in the corp users or corporate users. So this is again going to reduce these kind of gaps that we talked about because now the rules are more clean, they're making more sense, and they have reduced this kind of attack vectors. And there is this kind of requirement that most of the guys normally talk about, the application default with the SSL decryption. So these are some of the things that happen when you're doing SSL decryption. For example, you will get that there are some things that are going to move. For example, when you're doing SSL decryption, so it might be not the SSL, but now when you do decryption, now the next application that you see is web browsing. So this again used to kind of crash on the older versions, but again this was fixed by the application default, which was very powerful, taking care of this traffic, having more characteristics onboarded as part of the payload. So once this is done, they can be able to care about this web browsing still, so long as it's doing this on port 443. So this kind of consistency again are going to reduce this kind of attacks by ensuring that there is no decryption that's going to be done on a different port. So again, making sure that this is more futuristic feature or having more futuristic rules. Not that maybe when an application is being done and then it's showing some fun behavior or changing the ports, then you need to come and fix this. So once these sessions are going to be done, even if it moves to web browsing, still after the decryption has been done, still you can be able to meet these kind of requirements instead of having this to be blocked. This was one of the ways in which some kind of behavior that used to happen before. So again, this was taken care of, and the application default is one of the recommended. If you don't understand actually by doing application default, all these kind of defaults, sometimes they can be able to protect you more than 80%. So they really follow some kind of best practices to make sure that you're supposed to be getting what you want or what is needed. So some of the nice outcomes that we realize from after doing all these things is that we are going to see a more cleaner road. So look at before and then after some of the components, some of the rules. Now this makes a lot of sense. Like you can see in the same let's say this kind of rule set, they've been really compressed into 6. Even if it's from now, this kind of 35,678 rules. So it's really making a lot of sense, not only making a lot of sense, but increasing this kind of readability and also reducing this kind of attack service. So how can we make sure that we do this kind of transformation easily? Are we going to move through all these 35,000 rules until now we move this to more IP-based tools? So one of the nice tools is called expedition tool. So you can easily when you want to do some kind of migration, you can easily fetch these kind of rules, maybe from a checkpoint or Cisco SA, then import them to this expedition migration tool. So expedition really is a very powerful tool that can easily move this into, convert these rules into a language that Palo Alto Networks and GFW understands, then which can really reduce the time that you're going to do the migration and maybe make the project to be much even lesser. So after doing this, these rules are going to be put here, and then we'll do some kind of monitoring. One of another very powerful solution that we normally do here is what you call best practice assessment. So the BPA helps us again to do some kind of auditing on these kind of confederations. We're not just making rules and now they're working for us, then we move on. So after some time again, we are going to have some kind of continuous auditing to make sure that this optimization is going to be done. So after police optimizer has done its own stuff, so we don't just stop there. Again, we need to explore this configuration maybe time to time to make sure that we're not just leaving any stone unturned. Standardize this kind of configuration. Again, it produce a very nice report on what's going to happen here, on what is happening. So at the end of the day, what's going to happen here is you're going to have some kind of heat maps showing different colors on feature adoption to make sure that there are no there are no things that are going to be left, to introduce this kind of vulnerabilities or gaps that the bad guys can use to penetrate into our network. So the BPA again assists us to make sure that these policies are very powerful, because it shows some of the weaknesses that you may not have. So it tells you, for example, you need maybe to turn on the threat prevention in this rule so that it can be also optimized. So after doing this again, you can be able now to reduce this kind of attack service. So I really encourage for those guys who already have this kind of policy optimizer solution in their environment to be able to run this either personally or maybe through some kind of an expert consultation. So we've got a very huge partner network out there, so they can easily do this for you. And after this, there are some of the recommendations after which you can be able to do this kind of optimization, change a few configurations or make them a little bit tight so that the bad guys cannot be able to find any loophole to come in. So I'll take maybe a few minutes to try to get into one of the devices here so that you can try to see 1, 2, 3. Maybe I'll try to show where this feature is and how you can be able to leverage it to have more visibility. All right. So meanwhile, if you have any question that is supposed to be answered, kindly use the Q&A session. I'll be able to have those questions. So maybe Harry, I don't know whether you're ready for with those kind of questions, or I should finish the demo, then we can do the questions.
Yes, we can end the session.
Okay, sure. Thanks again. Thanks a lot, guys, for coming. You can have a good day.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.